And today, the Wheel of Instruments falls on...
Oh, so exciting!
The clarinet?
Oh, yes, the clarinet. That instrument in all these clarinet tracks I love.
Yeah, so here's one for all of our clarinet heads in the audience.
Yeah, you also have no idea what to pick, right?
Yeah, not a clue. Whoever put this in the wheel?
Hello.
Eddie!
You just wait until we drag you back to the Music Arcade. Hello everyone, and welcome to an unfortunately Eddie-less episode of Music Arcade. This is his responsibility, and we tried to drag him back here. I'm Galen the Sound Guy Firestone, by the way.
And I am disappointed, and also Rikako, but mostly disappointed.
Yeah. This one... Oh boy.
I didn't hate the clarinet before doing research for this episode.
Me neither. I thought it was fine. I no longer think it's fine. I think it needs to be banned. Just take it out of orchestras entirely. It would ruin every orchestra on the planet for reasons that I'll get into later, but...
It needs to pick a lane.
Yeah. Eddie threw on this apparently a year and a half ago, and he couldn't make it to recording because of work.
I think that was in the same batch where he put in the xylophone as well.
At least the xylophone we got some interesting songs out of. This one...
Yeah, we got interesting marimba songs mostly.
We got a lot of marimba. And some glockenspiel.
Yes.
Or symphony bells, as they're known outside of Germany.
Point being, temper your expectations. There may be mostly non-clarinet instruments in this clarinet episode.
Yeah, this one was rough. I had a catchphrase in my notes, which I'll reveal towards the end of this. I likened this when discussing this whole situation to this being the Music Arcade equivalent of Eddie farting in an elevator and then getting off to let us ride the rest of the way.
Yeah, pretty much. Except the fart in this instance may not have smelled much, but what an ambiguous sound it left out.
Honestly, I like the way clarinet sounds, but nobody uses it as a feature. And that's another thing that I will talk about later. It's just not a featured instrument. It's not meant to be. It's just woodwind backing. It's harmony.
Yeah. And we did manage to find some picks, but may or may not be a clarinet. Who knows?
Who knows? Let's go ahead and dive in with, I guess, our proof of concept. Age of Mythology. This was the Eddie one that inspired this, wasn't it? He said?
Yeah. And his remark on this one was, oops, I thought this was a clarinet, but actually it's a flute, I think.
Oh, that's the instrument he was listening to, because I heard some instruments in the background that I'm like, my exact notes say that might be a clarinet if I squint at it hard. It could also be a really weirdly tuned French horn sample.
Yeah, no, I think that was his memory playing tricks on him.
That's gonna happen a lot over the course of this episode. Because there's some familiar songs in here that I would have thought were reed instruments, and all of them were French horn.
Oh yeah, even more so with some of the tracks I haven't picked. Like, some tracks I was sure had something fitting, and actually, nope, that's not even close.
Yeah.
Some of those I had in mind weren't even wind instruments at all.
Well, neither technically is a clarinet, it's a reed instrument. It comes from the same family as the oboe and the saxophone. It does not come from the same family as the flute.
Yeah. It's wind operated, but it's not a wind in that sense.
Correct.
Just like the saxophone, though mostly made out of brass, is also a reed.
Correct.
I remember my few music classes I took many, many years ago.
I admit keeping up on this is a little more of an occupational hazard for me, but this one proved really challenging.
You don't say.
Okay, Age of Mythology, we already started talking about this. I do like this song. It's got a cool use of chime synths. It's very angelic. The jank horn samples are a thing, but jank horn samples are often a thing. Like, that's just what horn samples do. I've talked about this a lot over the course of the show.
Yeah, it's like recording one that's good is difficult or something.
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't, I don't think really has a clarinet in here, does it?
Yeah, but it's a pretty chill tune, and
Yeah.
the instrument that is supposed to be clarinet adjacent adds to a sense of adds a bit of a restful note in the background.
Yeah. It's
Like,
kind of a low
soothes
treble,
things.
which is nice. It's a nice vibe.
Yeah, it's kinda like, in this instance, what you'd use. That's annoying because I know the word for what I want to say in French, but not in English.
Go ahead and use it in French. Maybe I will get lucky and be able to translate it, question mark?
Une nappe, which is an extending background sound used in electronic music.
A pad? That would usually be called a synth pad.
Possibly. Then would the phrase, essentially the clarinet in an orchestral piece kind of takes on that role if it's left for long drawn out notes in the background.
It's meant to fill sonic space, which is not a bad thing, and it usually sounds very nice doing so.
Yeah, it's just not a front and center feature.
No. And in fact, I kind of want to just skip past this song and move on to Unicorn Overlord because there's a good reason why the clarinet isn't used for feature, because if you're going to use a clarinet feature, you're going to go to either a saxophone, which strangely doesn't really appear in this episode, or the enemy of this episode, the oboe.
Yes.
Because oboe features are actually very common.
Yeah.
And my very first line on this Elheim Unicorn Overlord track is, yeah, that's an oboe.
Yeah, I figured that's very much a possibility. I even had a clarinet short piece to come back to try to keep the sound in mind as I picked my tracks, but after a while I just gave up, honestly.
Yeah, same. I have a song in here that's also very much an oboe, and then a song in here that is not that. It's that French horn thing we just talked about in the first song again.
Yeah.
Nobody uses this. Anyway, so the Unicorn Overlord track, hey, it sounds kind of Sakimoto-ish. I know he himself didn't work on it, but one of his disciples did, and Bass Escape is credited, so...
Yep.
It's definitely in that, zone of what Hitoshi Sakimoto does. This song sounds great. I like this song a lot.
Oh yeah, it feels very rounded, even though it's very low-key. Like, there's a lot happening, but in the periphery.
Yeah.
Which fits perfectly for a dense elven forest where there might be an ambush in every corner.
I still want to, I've talked about this a lot, I still want to slap Vanillaware for making this console exclusive, and apparently doing so because they're just fanboys.
Yep. Because more people need to enjoy this game, because I don't think, especially now that I've played Visions of Mana, I don't think anything is going to take it off as a center spot for Game of the Year, as far as I'm concerned.
I would really like to play this one. I just, I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could buy it on my PlayStation, but why deal with that? I have a perfectly good PC. I'm basically done with consoles at this point in my life.
Yeah.
Says the guy actively looking forward to Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but still.
It's a bit of a different case. Nintendo's gonna Nintendo. At least they're playing for their own team,
Yeah, they're at least consistent in their console nonsense. This Vanillaware thing is just, it annoys me. It bothers me.
Yeah. It frustrates more than anything.
Yeah. There is this just stigma in Japan about the PC gaming sector that really
And
has no business still being there this late in the game.
Yeah, like, it's eroded bit by bit since Dark Souls got a Steam port.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's essentially gone with one notable standout studio being Vanillaware for some weird reason.
I mean, I'm going to bring up a much pervier franchise for a moment, but Senran Kagura was also PlayStation exclusive for a very long time, and actually found much more success when it moved to Nintendo and later PC, and was able to get their releases and actually make some decent money. And then the guy in charge of that franchise quit because he couldn't put it on PlayStation to be successful. I'm like, my man, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah. Like, that's a fanboyish attitude that I cannot fathom.
Me neither.
In any case, Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah.
Still a good game.
It looks like a good game.
Which makes it all the worse.
Yeah. I want to play this really badly.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I will.
And as far as the theme goes, it fits the very tactical speed of the game, which previous tracks in previous areas do, but this one is especially low-key, which makes it feel like a briefer chapter between two very martial nations.
That makes sense.
If you follow the suggested progression, you go after the starting part through Dragonhold, which is this very militaristic nation. Then you go to them, and then you go to the Beastlands, which are not actually named the Beastlands, they're named Bastorius, but they're where the furries of this world exist, and they are, for a lot of them, very angry. So in between them, something that's a little bit more subdued makes tonal sense, and even though you introduce in a very high-speed tense battle, eventually it's more smaller skirmishes with that kind of tunes, and it provides a nice audio transcription of the diversity of missions you can undertake in this game.
Yeah, all I really saw from that was the menu screen, and that sure looked very Ogre Battle to me. And I'm like...
That is extremely Ogre Battle indeed.
Yeah. You know what we're not talking about much? The clarinet.
What aren't we talking about much? Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Which is an oboe, but
yeah,
still.
it's an oboe. It's a cool oboe solo. I like the song.
Yeah. It's nice front and center, and it really completes the sense of mystery this forest has, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. All right. Now we move on to something I'm embarrassed to have picked, but it's one of the only songs I heard over 4 hours of research that I could 100% positively identify clarinets in.
Honestly, that's impressive in itself.
Yeah. So, Flowers Blooming in the Church from FF7 Remake is strings and woodwinds and reeds, and there's clarinet chords happening in the background. About, what is it, a minute and a half into the song, give or take? Yep, there's clarinets there. They exist. They're real.
Incredible. A clarinet in the wild.
I hate that I had to resort to that.
Yeah.
This is one of the most famous, talked about, and examined songs, and I'm just like, this is just where I'm stuck now.
Not necessarily the song itself, but the game. Like, it's FF7.
The game for sure. This one's usually discussed as an extension of Aerith's theme.
Yeah. Because it takes a lot of it as part of itself, which makes sense. It's the first encounter with her. Well, second encounter, actually.
Yeah, I was hitting the random button for like 4 hours yesterday trying to find anything. And this was actually the last song I picked because I was able to positively say, yes, there are clarinets here. And that should go to show just how rarely used this instrument is.
Yeah. And even then, it's not through all of the song. Like,
No.
It takes a spot at some point and then it passes it over. It's like the second character in a baton pass chain in Persona 5, you know?
Oh, God.
That's not what you're doing, but you're not exactly the star of this show right now.
Yeah. I mean, the clarinet is never the star of the show, and I think the rest of this episode is going to show that off very nicely.
Very much so.
Like,
to be clear, we don't hate the clarinet because of how it sounds.
No, it sounds nice.
Because of how it seems like you don't find it so much as you rip it off a track forcefully because it keeps it secret for as long as possible.
Yeah, a clarinet is, as we've kind of alluded to, a clarinet is an instrument that you never really hear, but you'd miss if it wasn't there.
Exactly. It helps make the sound more full.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, it helps make this peaceful instant, again, like I've said with the Elheim stage, it helps make things calm down after a messy situation. In this case, the fight with Airbuster.
Yep. God, I wish I had an excuse to talk about Airburster. Do I love that mix.
It's a great mix.
Really is.
And this one works very well too.
Oh yeah, I mean, FF7 Remake soundtrack was great. I stand by my original statement way back in our very first episode. It isn't the best song of 2021. It is definitely the best soundtrack of 1997, or whatever this released.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a timeless classic for a reason, and songs like this are a big part of that.
Yeah. And a lot of what made the original Final Fantasy VII soundtrack so great was how much of a technical showcase it was in what you could do with songs on a CD support.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely pushed things forward, but even just the straight compositions, as we've heard with the remake soundtrack, still sounding great. Still really work.
Exactly. Like, if you're going to demonstrate how much you can layer, you might as well do it by sending a few masterpieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, moving on to a game I have not played at all, and that's Actraiser Renaissance, and I'm just going to start with the catchphrase, yeah, that's an oboe.
Yeah, I figured. And it's even worse in this case, because the track is named Outpost Shrouded in Sand.
Mm-hmm.
It's the town theme for the sandy part of the world, the desert city.
It sounds like
building. Yeah, exactly. And sounding like a thing is exactly the point, because while this is an oboe, I think in its case and many other desert track cases that might have reed instruments, they used because they're reed instruments, which is the closest we can have to some more authentic North African picks. From a bit of search, I think the Argul or the Raita might be better fit.
But, I mean, given the way this sounds, it doesn't sound like a sample for those was readily available.
Yeah, exactly. Yuzo Koshiro is mainly a synths guy, so...
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong,
When
I
he
like this song a
composed-
lot. Like, he did a really good job on
exactly.
this one. But there's definitely some instrument replacement going on here. That oboe is very clearly a Western European instrument.
Exactly. And it's even more confusing because, so, in the original Actraiser, there was just one tone theme from every tone.
Right.
They changed that for Renaissance, which means that they had new themes composed for every tone besides the first, which kept the original tone theme. So far, so good.
Right.
But they also added are SNES soundtrack versions of the songs, which means returning to the original for the songs that were there, but there were also new SNES-like mixes composed of the new songs. And in the one for this track, this doesn't even sound close to a reed instrument. It sounds more like a flute.
Oh no.
So it's the kind of confusing translation that makes sense in the historical sense, but is
It's inconsistent with its own
backwards
remix.
in a way that's incredibly confusing.
Oh. I'm starting to wonder if anybody actually likes the clarinet.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. Our next song, also brought to us by Eddie, is only the second song I could positively identify a clarinet in.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Because this one, he identified it pretty positively as well.
Yes, my exact notes. Hey, an actual clarinet. I can hear the buzziness of the reed, and it doesn't actually sound like an oboe for once. It goes away quickly, but it exists.
Yeah. So, shoutouts for Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah.
And this song by Borislav Slavov.
I mean, this
has clarinet.
Yeah, this is also a
hook,
really
no
great
less.
song. I know that Eddie really likes this guy.
Yeah. Like, this is not the first Divinity Original Sin track we've had.
No, certainly not. I know this isn't the part I was supposed to pay attention to, but I really like the harp plus vocal section. That actually, like, really made me feel things.
No. What I like when thinking and keeping my focus on the clarinet is how it's used not just in the hook, but in the transition. Again, having this pivot point role. Even in this track where it's not the center point, but it's passing the back from one section of the song to another.
Yeah.
Which is what it's great at.
Yeah. Yeah. When the clarinet is used properly in a segment like this, it does sound good. Composers just don't do it.
Yeah. Or they do it in a way that's just... like, it's not the kind of thing you're supposed to pay attention to.
Right. It's not a feature instrument.
Not as a listener, anyway.
Certainly not. And I keep saying, like, it's meant to fill space, and I know that sounds bad. Like, it sounds like I'm dismissing it. I'm really not. That is an important role it has.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for all the joke we're doing about hating the clarinet, we don't. It's just that this is like if we had a podcast specialized in bricks, and the wheel of kind of bricks gave us mortar as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And Eddie in Twitch chat, who couldn't be here but is apparently here to say his piece, says, and I quote, "Unless you're Mozart, literally compose a clarinet concerto." I think we've reasonably established that most video game composers are not, in fact, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Indeed. And that's no shade to them, that's a pretty high bar.
It's a pretty high bar.
Now, I will also say that during my search, I even started to just search popular tracks from games I knew and see if there were some clarinet remixes. And there were some, but I didn't really think like I had much to say about them.
Yeah.
You did find something that's pretty interesting in that regard. So.
I guess. I mean, yeah, that's an oboe.
Of course. That detail side.
Right? Okay, so I grabbed Go Go Gadget Gonkulator from the Balance and Ruin FF6 Remix album from Overclock Remix, which I brought up for a while. And it has a really great oboe solo at the start of the song.
Yeah.
And what's funny is this also gives me a weird story from my first attempt at college, back when I was still thinking I was going to be a lawyer like the rest of my family. And one of my professors tells a story about how he actually, while doing an investigation for DOJ, Department of Justice, I don't remember if he was FBI or some other service like that, but he was interrogating somebody, and you are allowed to deceive suspects, reasonable deception of suspects in the States. And he had to explain at trial what a gonculator was, because he convinced the person he was interrogating that they had a lie-detecting gonculator, that exact word, which apparently I guess came from a TV show, and that got the suspect to confess. And then he had to, like, defend that in court.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those two gonculator heads out there.
I guess. Eddie, what, you don't keep a gonculator near you at all times? I wish. Okay, so...
We are not adding the gonculator to the wheel of instruments. That is my limit.
That would make a good April Fool's episode, though. And we have to kind of defend what a gonculator actually is.
True.
Anyway.
Yeah.
This song is neat. It's a very neat remix. I like this Balance and Ruin remix album a lot.
Yeah, and this one shows really both the mysterious aspect and then takes the theme for something more lighthearted and very catchy, very dancey like that.
Oh, it very much is.
Festive.
But it also kind of proves a point that we've been saying. If you're going to use a reed instrument as a feature, you're almost always going to use an oboe or a sax.
Yeah. Or something either more jazzy or more...
Right.
Something that has more of a jab than a grab, if you will.
Sure. I guess we can talk about... I don't know. I hear jabby. I think trumpet, because that one does staccato much better than basically any reed instrument.
Yeah, of course. But, like, something a bit more incisive. Not that much, but it's a sliding scale.
Yeah. It's hard for me to find something new to say is the problem. Yeah. We're dealing, again, I keep harping on this point, we're dealing with an instrument that really likes staying in the background, and every time we come close, it isn't one. And even then, I have very little to say, other than, yeah, the solo's nice. Eddie, what have you done to us?
He has tormented us.
He has. He's punishing us for something.
He us from a year and a half ago.
Oof. Yeah, Go-Go's theme's neat. It's fun.
Yeah.
I kind of hope we get a full FF6 remix one day.
That would be great. In this instance, I think it really helps encapsulate his nature as a secret optional character as well.
Yeah.
Like, with the lightheartedness, it's not a joke character either, but something that's out of the way and that's not necessarily central to the main drama. It's just, it's doing its thing.
So let's go ahead and talk about probably what was the biggest drama to me over the course of selecting my tracks. And that was a good 10 minutes I spent listening to this song going, what instrument is that?
Yeah, I've had a couple of those as well.
Yeah. So this one, in a day I can only call the Oops All Square, we have ourselves easily the most unique song that I picked, and that is Leaf of Chaos Battlefield from Drakengard 3. And I really do like this soundtrack. I think it's probably one of Monaka's more underrated ones. Everyone talks about Nier, but Drakengard 3 was also really great.
Drakengard 3 was such a fun time.
It was.
It takes a very hard turns at times, and yet manages to be like one of the best comedy games there is. It's like the closing chapter of the PS2, PS3 era jank.
Yeah.
And I love it for it.
Oh yeah, no, it's a wonderful game. And plus it gave me Terra Platt cursing like a sailor, which just makes me happy inside.
right from even before the main menu arrives too. Really, I was about to say Drakengard 3 worked so Neo could run, but Drakengard 3, I believe, released a little bit after Nier.
It released between the two Nier games.
Yeah.
The first Nier was Xbox 360, kind of beginning-ish of its life cycle, while Drakengard 3 was PlayStation 3 towards the end. Most notably, Cavio rolled up after the first Nier, and was... I guess their personnel was taken in by the producer of this game.
Yeah. A case where the brand disappeared, but the team didn't. So.
Yes. And anyway, so this song has a fair bit of background, what I thought at the time were reeds. And I'm listening to this going, that's a reed, right? That's a reed, right? That's a reed, right? Nope, that is our second time now, and not the last one. That is the second time now that it's just a weirdly EQ'd French horn sample.
Yeah.
And it took me a really, really long time to identify that.
I guess a French horn in the background camouflages as a clarinet very well.
Yeah, turns out they have a fairly similar sonic space. They're just used differently, and obviously a French horn's an actual brass instrument, so it sounds brassier.
Yeah.
But when you start messing with those samples and you start messing with the frequency response, it comes out sounding very different from what you'd normally associate with a French horn. And it comes out sounding like a reed instrument, and I spent a very long time going, is that a clarinet? Is that the answer to my problem? No. No, it isn't. Nobody uses this instrument.
Betrayal again.
It is, but it was very interesting to see, well, very interesting to hear how the transformation of this instrument went. And Keiko Hawashi, I believe, is the lead composer of this particular track. And, I mean, I like the guy's work, obviously.
Yeah.
And I love this song, but, man, picking apart instruments on this one was very difficult.
Theme.
It's a very nice field theme.
Manages to depict the kind of atmosphere around it very well. It leaves room for the variations that the combat system demand, because it has to be ready to intensify whenever you activate internal mode and the like.
Yep.
And so it manages to be very full without being too much on the forefront.
Yeah. And on the subject of weirdly EQing, I think that's Emmy Evans on the vocals, but if it is, she sounds weird.
Yeah.
She does have tracks on this which are more obviously hers, including and especially the final boss track. But, I think this is like the one field theme that she did as well. And sure, sounds like her at times, kind of, sorta, but man, is it off her norms.
I would have absolutely no idea, quite frankly. When you're looking at clarinets, even the voices of those artists you love start sounding confusing.
Yeah, it's try to pick this out of a lineup really mess with my head. And now we have ourselves a little Castlevania block. Order of Ecclesia. Yeah, that's an oboe.
Yeah. It's a DS oboe, no less, so...
Yeah.
It's got a bit of a special twinge to it, but it leaves more room to interpretation that way. Overall, though, I really like that field theme. It's still in the first half of the game when you're doing essentially linear section, and this really feels like an updated version of the tone of those sections in the linear Castlevanias of old.
Which is funny,
you
because I'm pretty sure
forward,
Order of
but-
Ecclesia isn't linear. I'm pretty sure that one's Metroidvania, right?
Well, it's a game of two halves. There is Dracula's Castle, but you only get there after a lot of the game, where you spend times doing quests and getting through different sections that are much more linear in nature.
Huh. Okay, cool. I will... I know the... whatever, Dominus Connection, I think they ended up calling it, just came out.
Yes.
I still need to buy and play that, and I will finally play Ecclesia before the end of this year, I'm
I
sure.
recommend it. Wonderful, then. I look forward to catching you on stream for that.
That one's been overdue, but I was really falling off out of handheld gaming by this point. I never even played Metroid Samus Returns. I'm still waiting for that one to get a, proper Switch port.
Yeah. Or even a proper PC port, who knows?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
I'm
that
sure
may
Nintendo
be a
will
little
ever
bit
do that.
greedy. Yeah. I mean, never say never, you know.
I won't say never, but if it's in my lifetime, I'll be very surprised. Nintendo is proving to be the sort of company that will close their servers entirely rather than let people play off of their systems.
True, true. I guess my optimism is fueled by the fact I did play Mario is Missing at my godmother's place when I was little.
Oh, I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, remember when Nintendo was really fun and experimental like that? The good old days.
Yeah, although let's not pretend this was the best of us, you know?
No. No, it wasn't, but it was still fun. I liked it.
As far as edutainment goes, yeah.
Yeah. It was great for kids. It was a great kids game.
Exactly. Unlike Order of Ecclesia, which is not exactly kid-rated, I believe.
No, that one's a fairly dark game from everything I've heard.
Yes. Certainly is. And in this section, I believe it's a mountain path in particular. And
Okay.
it's funny to see that the main... I took it mainly because the main centerpiece, in this case being the oboe and not the clarinet, I guess, works for a snow-battered mountain path as much as it works for a blazing, scorching hot desert. And that deserves a bit of respect, at least, you know? There's versatility and flexibility in the instrument. Sure, it's not the instrument we're supposed to listen to, but shoutouts to the oboe out there.
Yeah. Oboes are cool. If there's one thing this episode taught me, it's that oboes are cool. I already kind of knew
Yeah.
that, but I'm glad to have some, foundation for that now.
Exactly. Sometimes what you're looking for is not what you truly needed to find.
Right.
That's the best I've got, honestly.
Yeah, same. All right, Hail to the Past, a classic one. Oh, hey, look, weirdly tuned French horns. Again.
And used in lieu of North African instruments again.
Uh-huh.
I think we're reaching a boiling point there. So, I say let it all out, Galen.
Now okay, fine. I guess we're just skipping Hail to the Past, or Hail from the Past.
I mean, what?
I'm not sure.
The one that
Yeah.
might have a unique perspective on it isn't there. So, first of all, we decide.
Actually,
Second of
Eddie
all-
is saying, I think it's actually used in lieu of an Indian instrument this time.
Wasn't it in the desert painting? You know, with the pyramids and the mummies and everything?
Okay. So my fourth song, I just picked in protest. I have
Yeah.
no intention of analyzing this in any way, shape, or form. I picked Slash the Demon from Dynasty Warriors 6. There is no clarinet. There is no reed instruments of any kind in this song. I'm angry.
You don't say. Maybe the real demon was the clarinet we looked for all along.
Right? Why, in the name of holy bleep, would anyone use a clarinet as a feature when oboes and saxophones are right there? RNG could have given me a Dynasty Warrior episode, but no! I think I can positively identify exactly 2 clarinets across every single prior song. I want to murder Mooks!
Yeah, because we didn't just pick the wheel of instrument. There were 3 options. You decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun to arrange that? This fell on the wheel of instruments, and then this fell on the clarinet. This was several layers of RNGs that led us right there.
Yes.
And honestly, when I look at the wheel of instrument, almost all the other entries I would have found myself much more comfortable with.
Oh yeah, there's some good stuff on here.
The only one I'm not confident I would feel more comfortable with would be the baritone sax.
Yeah, that one I put in as a troll originally, and then discovered a couple of really good baritone sax songs, and I'm like, oh, I actually have something to talk about. It's no longer a troll. It would be difficult. It'd be less difficult than clarinets on the subject of difficult reed instruments.
Yeah, better fight against a huge wall than just being dropped in the middle of nowhere and just told to figure it out.
Yeah, pretty much. This episode was a mess. Selecting the songs for this episode was a mess. We're supposed to be talking about clarinets. We have over 10 songs here. 2 of them feature clarinets in any meaningful way.
And this leads me to my final conclusion, which I will illustrate with Lonely Queen Bee from Atelier Esca and Logi.
This is a nice song.
It is. It's the theme for the main antagonist, believe it or not.
Really? A trumpet-led waltz for the lead antagonist. Interesting.
Yeah, essentially it's the saved consciousness of an alchemist from the past that kind of got eroded with time. So she's trying to do something positive, but forgot some things like how the consequences of her actions might put in jeopardy the world as it currently is. And so she isn't really trying to fight off the protagonist at first, more than she's trying to figure out why they're going after her, and not really getting a satisfying answer because it's been eroded. So there's this mystery, this aspect of somebody that's lost in time that's illustrated very well with this music. It feels almost lullaby-like as well.
I'm not sure I'd say I think that. I don't get quite a lullaby from this, but it seems a little too much energy for that.
Yeah, the start maybe, but then it changes instruments, it changes speed, and one of the changes of instruments is when it goes from the flute to what I assume at this point is probably an oboe. Can you confirm with Yovai that the instruments that the second to take the lead, around 30 seconds, is indeed an oboe and not a clarinet here too?
Let me re-listen, because I didn't actually hear that.
Insert elevator music here.
Okay, so that, to my ears, from about 30 to 45 seconds, doesn't sound like a oboe or a clarinet. That's a muted trumpet.
Sure, let's go with that then. But this sound is doing what the instrument does even when it's, maybe just when it is at its best, because there's a section before that's a flute, and there's a section later that takes the lead as well, but instead plays it with strings. Violins, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of violin going on here. This is a very cool, instrument list, to be honest.
Yeah, it works very well. Like, there's even xylophones that are pretty present as far as xylophones tend to go, to underline the mechanical aspects of the contraption the consciousness is tied to, presumably. But my main point here is that, again, even in this track, it takes the pivotal role, not to say it's right front of center, but it is just that, the pivot.
Right.
It goes from one instrument to the next to the next. It passes on, and it's a transitory period. It's not a place, it's a highway. And that's why it's so hard to pin it down. So, between the fact that it's at its best when it's articulating between two instruments, or when it's pretending to be another instrument, or when it's closed enough to be confused by another instrument, it's always stepping back, always supporting from the shadows without really stepping out in the front. Really, the clarinet is the healer class of the instruments.
Oh, wow. That's some brain power right there.
I managed to reap a conclusion from all of this mess. That's all I can do.
I don't know if there's anything else we can do.
Besides, of course, moving to Music Arcade, no playing.
Alright, you go first.
So, I've just started touching a bit about it as a break after picking my songs for this episode. But I saw a video from Carl Sagan42, about this game that took Link to the Past and turned it into a roguelike dungeon crawler. And thought this was very cool, got it to myself, and it is indeed very fun to play.
Yeah,
So
I've heard of that.
The
I want
first
to check
three
that out.
levels have... Yeah, and the first three levels have the Hyrule Castle as the theme, and it's a very good theme. You don't hear nearly as often as it deserves in its original game, so shoutouts to that.
Even in later ones, like you hear it in Link Between Worlds, obviously, but even then that's kind of brief, and then you hear it in a very, very brief snippet of it in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think in Wind Waker you get a bit of it too.
You know, I'm not as familiar with the Wind
Even
Waker
then.
soundtrack, at least in that part of it, because most of the footage I watch tends to skip a lot of that, because apparently it's a log check and a
Yes.
randomizer.
In fact, I would even say that it took quite a bit of effort to skip the castle part.
Yeah. Yeah, barrier skip is kind of like the creme de la creme when it comes to Wind Waker speedrunning and later randomizers.
A big deal. And then, as I believe I alluded to before, I played Visions of Mana. Finally.
Yeah.
It released, and it is indeed good. It's pretty much at the edge of what my computer can run, so right now it's a bit on hold because I've ordered a new computer, and the last parts should arrive by Tuesday.
Yay!
So I'll get an upgrade and I'll be able to play it actually smoothly, but even with the graphics at its lowest and everything, this game has incredible moments of beauty and style, and
Cell-shaded games still seem to look pretty great on low graphic settings.
yeah, but it's not even on the character side of things. It's the scenery and the way it's arranged. It really feels like it's artworks animated and brought to life, which is why it's all the more a shame that every time the game is mentioned, the discussion isn't going to be about its qualities or its unsettling scenario or its amazing characters, but about how the studio got shut off right after it's released.
Yeah. I was...
I hope on the long term this doesn't become its legacy, even though the baffling nature of these decisions almost makes me think, like, part of me believes that it kind of deserves to be this legacy because it's an important topic.
It is. And it sucks that it happened to a game that you seem to believe is very good. I still have no real interest in playing it, but At the same time, like, we need to examine that they released this game and then got shut down, like, immediately without even any chance of them seeing sales or finding a profit. It's like they were already on the chopping block.
It's a complete shame.
It is. It is a complete shame what's going on in the industry right now.
And as far as the music goes, it's really solid all throughout, and in particular, the one I picked to illustrate the game, The Benevolent of Earth, is a very sudden twist, because the game's music is pretty chill all throughout, and suddenly they drop that for a gimmick fight with big cannons and everything, and things go serious for a moment. It's very fun. It's a good game. It deserved better. The people that made it deserved better, especially.
Yeah,
Norman,
absolutely.
what have you been playing?
So, 2 games on the list. First is Arknights as usual. Our second Rainbow Six Siege crossover now exists, and that is Operation...
Collapse and Ice, they did it right.
Yeah, honestly, yes. And that is Operation Lucent Arrowhead, starring Ella as our 6-star, Iana, Doc, and Fuse. Fuse being particularly notable for how bad he is.
Oh, unfortunate.
Yeah, but the music is great, as always. It just sounds and feels good, and I like the Rainbow Six crossover. I did the first time, I do the second time. It's fun.
Sounds like a solid Dark Knights collab to me.
It is. It makes a lot more sense than our upcoming Delicious in Dungeon one, which just released in China that has me scratching my head very much.
Yeah. That's a bit tonally different, this one, let's say.
Just a bit. This one is very consistent. It was very clear very early on that the director was a fan of Rainbow Six, and there were a lot of things about it. And the crossovers have made that continue to be clear. The other thing I'm playing, that I started almost on a whim. I say almost on a whim because I did do my research into it. So very recently there was a Steam space exploration sale, and one game on it I noticed was on my wish list for some reason. I don't remember putting it there. Was called Everspace 2, and I've never played the first Everspace. I never heard of it. I looked at the Steam page. I'm like, this seems neat. Let's see if anybody's playing it on Twitch. 2 people were playing it on Twitch.
Well then.
The first person was in German, and decided to fly his spaceship in a straight line and then wonder why he exploded because he was getting shot at. This told me nothing.
That doesn't seem like a very useful strategy.
It wasn't. It wasn't a useful strategy, nor was it useful in telling me how the game actually plays, because he refused to maneuver and just got shot to death. And I'm like, that would be true in just about every game on the planet. I don't know what you expected to accomplish here.
Yeah.
The second person I checked out, the second I go onto their Twitch channel, their controller disconnects. Apparently ran out of batteries. And I'm like, well, this timing's bad. Fine. So I look at the Steam page again, notice there's a demo, try out the demo, and discover I really like this game. So I bought it, I've been playing it, Everspace 2, really cool. It follows up on Freelancer, if you're familiar with that at all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is basically
Intimately
Freelancer.
familiar.
Yeah, it's Freelancer, but with more shooting, which is fine by me. I like the action stuff. And it's got a really cool, like, synthwave soundtrack. And every system has their own, like, hyperdrive music, kind of like its own Overworld, which is a really neat feature. This game has been surprising at how good it is, and as of recording, there's DLC coming out for it tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm looking forward to checking that out tomorrow.
Flesh out even more the experience of a game you gave a chance on a whim and ended up really liking.
Yeah,
To say.
there's a high chance this will end up my game of the year. It depends on whether or not I consider Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance to be a different game or not, which is a question that is still bouncing around in my head because I didn't give that pass to Persona 5 Royal, but I did give that pass to the various FF14 expansions. So it depends on how much I feel they've really changed. So we'll see.
Yeah, because there's a whole new branching path, and I guess that the question is how much of a different game this feels like as a result of that.
Yeah, that is the real question, and it does feel very different, and the whole new story is definitely a whole new story. Like, it's It goes in some very different places than the OG, than the vanilla.
Well then.
Meanwhile, Everspace 2, apparently Everspace 1 was a roguelite.
Yes, it was. That's why I was confused when you said that there were that this was more in the line of Free Space, because I knew of Everspace 1, which was indeed a roguelite, and I assumed Everspace 2 was too.
No, it's a fully curated experience. It's a video game. I'm playing I don't want to say utterly non-procedural, because there are procedural elements. There's like random encounters you could get, but those are literally like the same thing as you get in frickin' Dragon Age Origins when you're going around the world map and suddenly there's random encounters there.
So in short, you playing a former roguelite turned fully featured game in space, and I'm playing a fully featured adventure game turned roguelite on the ground.
Yeah.
Contrast!
Yeah, so far, Everspace 2 gets a giant recommendation from me. I wish more people would pay attention to this game. This was such an accident, such a gem to find. So, and the soundtrack is really cool. It's got that, like, really nice synthwave stuff that I'm a big fan of these days, so.
Yeah, I think the way you feel, I don't think I felt that since finding probably Warriors of the Nile 2. Which is this really fun roguelike tactical game that really worked with me. And that I've seen talked about nowhere else, so.
Well, I'm talking about it here. If you like
exactly.
your space shooters with a healthy dose of exploration, puzzle solving, and trading to make money, go play Everspace 2.
Love me some space trading.
And with that, I think that is everything we have time for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I would say this has been a fun one, but no, this has been a massive pain in my butt.
I guess you're truly well undone.
I could go without ever paying attention to a clarinet ever again. That's a little harsh, but that is how I feel at this exact moment in time.
And that is exactly how the clarinet would want it.
I think so too. As always, you can find our playlist of songs that are mostly oboe and French horn in the description. And you can find how to contact us.
You
know
can
the places
find
by
stuff
now.
wherever you search, figure it out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!